Ghana's energy crisis has lasted way more than many Ghanaians can tolerate. Businesses have crumbled under the effect of the Dumsor, and along with it, jobs have been sacrificed so these businesses can stay afloat. Lives have also been lost as hospitals struggle to provide alternative power for life-saving procedures. Promises, assurances, and numerous deadlines by government officials to resolve the crisis have all been broken. So when at all would the darkest period of the night be over? And if indeed reports that the emergency power barges expected in April to ease the crisis won't be coming in after all, then indeed we have a big problem on our hand. Is there ever going to be an end to this Dumsor? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Anti. Now, it does appear the current load shedding exercise, which started as far back as 2012, may persist a while longer. There is no end in sight. Emissaries sent to Turkey to find out the state of power barges that would ease the power crisis have come home empty-handed, as the barges are still under construction. Car Power, the company tasked to provide the barges, says it cannot deliver by the end of April as it needs time to deliver to Ghana's specifications. So where do we go from here? Let's first find out what people are saying about this Dumsor.
No, they have not been able to abide by the timetable. The reason is that it's like they have to do more concerning their promise so that this issue can be settled in no time.
Not at all. Because like they give a particular period for giving people light, let's say the 24 hours, 6 hours kind of thing, and in the moment you realize that it takes 2 days and there's no light at all in a particular area, and that's very bad.
First of all, we were giving a timetable of 24 hours off and then 12 hours without light. But these days, there seems to be improvement over that timetable. But instead of that improvement enhancing or impacting on business, is rather creating some kind of instability in the business environment. Because when we had 24 hours off and 12 hours on, you are able to organize or get yourself together, and because you know what sort of timetable you have. But now that we even have improvement, it is even more erratic. You don't know whether you have power for 24 hours or you're going to lose it for 24 hours. Generally, there's improvement. That's what I can say. But
formerly, it was 24 hours. But these days now, the time factors came down. Maybe we enjoy the light than how it was before. Especially during the weekends. For example, this evening, the light will come. It will be there till Monday before they will take it light in. So there is a little improvement. But we just need that the improvement should, so that it will be stable like it was before. It cannot end at once because of there's a lot of damages in it. It should be a gradual process. As there's from 24 hours to 12 hours, from 12 to be 6, from 6 to be taken before it will be ended. It cannot end at once. That is my own view of how I saw it.
Even though we can anticipate that it's a technical problem, but yet still, in terms as a Christian, we also believe that there is a spiritual aspect we need to be dealt with. And if the body of Christ can come together and then intercede concerning this issue, I believe solutions can come to Ghana.
The marginal improvement that we're experiencing now does not have any concrete explanation from government. It's not backed with any concrete explanation from government why we have such improvement. So it means that there are things that have been done behind the scenes and we are getting power. If that is it, then it means that we have to keep on the pressure on government. We have to keep on the pressure on government. So it appears that the pressure which was put in on government is what has created the power crisis. So more pressure is what will make the government solve the problem.
Certain laws have to be put in place to just, or be enforced on them to just do their job. You know, people need light, yeah, to work and all that. So they just have to provide the light as they promised.
Right. So those were views from the streets of Accra. Many people are not happy about what is happening. There are those who have some relief, get some lights on during the weekend, a few relaxations for them. I mean, in particular in my area where I live, I've had a couple of good periods where I get power, and then I get a lot more periods off. So it's not very clear what's happening to the power rationing issues, really. Anyway, let's get onto the telephone lines now and speak to the Director of Research at the African Center for Energy Policy, ASAP. He's called John Peter Amil. Good evening, sir. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
Right, so now it does appear there is no clear indication whether this power crisis is going to end or not. There were times that we thought that there being some 200 megawatts introduced, so we've been giving a little bit of relief. And then all of that goes back again, and we don't know what is happening. From where you stand as an energy expert, can you clearly tell us anything at all? Because we're not getting any responses from government.
Well, it's rather unfortunate the government is not able to come out to tell us clearly what the situation is. But as it is now, the status of the energy sector basically has to do with problems relating to funding, lack of sufficient funding for the sector. There are some generation plants currently that can still be fired with, light crude oil. The water level in the Akusobo Dam is not up to expectation, which we all agree. We Dam is currently working, but the water level is also not up to the expected level. Gas currently is coming from Nigeria. We have our own domestic gas coming in. The difficulty that we have now, basically, according to our little research, has to do with those plants that have gone on systematic, maintenance that have not come on board. If you look at our generation capacity currently, we have excess generation capacity over our peak demand. What that means is that if all the plants we have now available are to operate at about 80 to 90% efficiency, we should be having sufficient power, within the consumption level of every average Ghanaians that consume power. Unfortunately, some of the plants are not just available. The plants are just not available. And those that are even available, sometimes they have to rely on light crude oil. Government is not able to come out with funding in terms of light crude to fire those generation plants. And this is how the problem is currently within the sector. And you agree with me that there have been some improvement in terms of, the hours that we go off and then the hours that will come on board. The improvement basically is because of the gas inflow from Nigeria, and also the T2 plant that we have, currently operating from Chakwadi. So that is how the situation is as of now.
Right, John Peter, I'm extremely grateful for this narrative you've given us, because this actually was supposed to be given to us by the government and its communications machinery. Do you feel that communications from the energy and power ministries have not been that efficient or good enough for us all to understand what the situation is?
Well, I think that government inability or the relation with its citizens in terms of the power sector basically has to do with government consistent promises. You agree that the power ministry on their own come out with a lot of promises that they are not able to adhere to. And so I think that also triggers some element of fear within, the ministry to come out to give any forecast or any status, because the promises are becoming too much, and I think Ghanaians are becoming fed up, and so nobody wants to speak again. And so I understand from government point their unwillingness to speak to Ghanaians because of the previous promises that they have made several times without living up to expectations.
That's right.
And so I think that is how the situation is currently in government. Yeah.
Right, Mr. Amil, I'll hold you briefly. Mr. Kwame Jantua, who is the Vice Chairman of PIAC, is also joining us. Mr. Jantua, we're grateful for your time. Now, I was speaking to John Peter Amil about communication, government not communicating enough to us, and the argument he makes, which I fairly agree with, is possibly because there have been too many promises that have not been honored, broken promises and all of that. Do you feel the same, that there have been too many promises that have been broken and that there have been inconsistent approaches to resolving the power crisis long term?
Good evening to fellow Ghanaians, and good evening to Peter, my good friend. You know, what I will say is that government should cut to the chase. If it so happens that you are given promises, you haven't been able to fulfill those promises, just come clean with Ghanaians. Ghanaians aren't looking for any highfalutin explanation. They're looking for honest explanation so that people know exactly where we are.
Mr. Johnson, we'll be grateful if you could speak a bit louder so we can hear you.
Yes, I'm saying that people just want to know what is happening with the power so that they can plan. Look, we had a time in this country where we had a curfew. Everybody knew that the curfew was from a certain time to a certain time. So they could plan. They knew that at a certain time, you shouldn't be seen on the street. So they planned. People, Ghanaians, don't want to buy food, put in the fridge, and the next thing they see, lights have gone out. Because you know what happens? You gradually can get food poisoning from the foods you bought and you put in the fridge. So all we need is that, look, come clean with us. Tell us what the situation is. It shouldn't take Peter to come on the radio to say this and this and this and this and this is what is happening. And I suspect that the communication thing in place within the Ministry of Power doesn't seem to be working. You see, I keep saying, who vote the government into power? It's the people who vote the government into power. And if the people vote the government into power, they are responsible to the people. So no matter how bad it sounds, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how good it looks, tell the people. Tell the people. And that is my stand. You know, the excuses have been too much. Look at these power badges issue. It was supposed to have come this month, wasn't it? Was it 1st April or end of April?
End of April, we were told.
End of April. We are sitting today, it hasn't come. It would have been a great idea if the communication team in the Ministry of Power came out to Ghanaians, even the ministers themselves had a conference. Look, we said we would bring XYZ at this particular time. We weren't able to bring it because A, B, C, D, E. Because of this, these are some of the things we put in place. Or we haven't been able to put anything in place. So the Dumsor is going to go on for, a longer duration. However, we have taxed the energy, the ECG, to make sure that they put the right times in place so that people know when their lights are going off, so that people can plan. I'm sure Ghanaians would be a bit satisfied with that. What is annoying Ghanaians is the fact that they are there, then the lights go off. They're there, then the lights come on. They're there, then the lights go off. They're there, then the lights come on. That is what they don't want. So Ghanaians are very reasonable people. Let's face it. If they know they can plan towards something, they will plan towards it when they know how that thing is going to happen. And I think, we've got to a stage where I beg for a government to start communicating. Communication is everything. To start communicating. But in communicating, the plans that they need to put together, they should put together. So, for instance, the reserve flow with the West African gas pipeline. Tell Ghanaians, where is that? Because we've got gas at Tuabo. We've got IPPs in Tema. They need the gas. What is happening?
But our understanding, Mr. Jantua, is that this reverse flow thing is not a short-term measure, that we do not expect that government can go through all the necessary processes to do a reverse flow through the West African gas pipeline so that we can get gas from Tuabo to boom for use by the Asogli power plant.
the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And the point I'm making is that even if down the road it's going to happen, let us know what the process is. Okay, this is what we have planned. This is the discussions we've had with XYZ, and this is how we feel we will get to, or the point we'll get to at such and such a time. And you stick to it. You see, the Dumsor is so critical to everything, to one's livelihood, to one's way of earning money,
That's
to
right.
everything. So you have to be able to communicate effectively.
Right, Mr. Johnson, let's shift on the discussions. I'll bring in John Peter Amewu down. Mr. Amewu, we've been seeing a lot of rains now. I don't know whether it's enough to raise the levels of the Akosombo and Bui dams, but do you think that the water situation should be improving by now and also correspond to perhaps more generation from the hydro dams we have?
Consider the historical performance over the dam. The level as it is now had not up to the previous performances. We expect a lot of inflow into the dam from July onwards. And so even if you start witnessing heavy downpour of water in the southern zone, that will not necessarily translate into an increase in the water level. That will be happening from July, onwards. That's when we expect the actual performance of the dam. So currently, I don't think the little improvement will gain in as a result of the downpour now will have any significant impact in the dam at all.
I see. So let's
again,
sure. Go on, sir.
Again, even if we have the Akosombo Dam, operating its full capacity, the maximum we may be gaining from that operation level will not be taking more than 1,000 megawatts, not at all. And so Akosombo Dam is very important and critical, but its maximum operating level in terms of efficiency alone cannot even solve the problem as we have now. Our shortfall currently is within a region about 450 to 500, considering the fact that we have about 120 coming in. So that is how the problem is. Going forward, I think that as a country, we should begin to look at our energy policy as a policy for government, not policy for political parties. And that when parties are in power, they should be able to implement what other parties have started. We said this over and over again that the cause of our energy problem currently largely has to do with government, inefficiency and lack of decision making in completion of the Akwabu gas project on time, and also the funding that was necessary for government. The previous government has started some processes. If those processes were continued as this government had come in place, I don't think we should be witnessing what we are witnessing today. So, largely, government failure in taking bold decisions. It's also.
But Ms. Amewu, is it not fair to commend government, at least for the fact that, despite all the setbacks, it was able to bring on board Ichiabo in decent time for VRA to use the energy coming from there?
Certainly, we acknowledge government efforts in bringing Ichiabo on board, but that would have been done about 2 years if things have not delayed. This is what I'm saying. So the indecision, in taking that bold decision at the time that is needed, that is what is critical for the power sector. Government is making moves, as we are aware, trying to increase the generation capacity. We don't doubt that. But then, do you consider the effect and the impact that this Dumsor has caused people? It has been estimated at almost about $1 billion over the period. And that is substantial. That is a huge amount of money that is going down straight from this country. And I think as a country, we should begin to look at the impact in terms of the effect that this Dumsor has caused the citizens of this country. It is very critical.
Very critical.
Government can still solve the problem. Don't forget, getting close to Easter, we have most of our lights on. How did that happen? How did that happen? What did we get the lights from? Government can today go in and buy power. Government can buy power on the stock market. Because of the connectivity and the tradability of power, we can still buy power on the stock market. Government refusal to buy power on the stock market is because of insensitiveness to the plight of the average
Right,
Ghanaian.
Ms. Amil,
I
would have to stop you because we were unable to get a government representative to react to such criticism, and that might not be very fair. Where we get to criticize government for not doing X when they don't have a chance to explain to us what they plan to do or what they've done. So I'm grateful though for your time, and we'll be moving on the discussions. John Peter Amil is the head of research at the African Center for Energy Policy. He joined us on today's Big Story. And Mr. Kwame Jantua is still on the line. Mr. Jantua, let's digress a bit and talk about alternatives. I do know that government has done quite a number of things, put in place a couple of measures, including making sure that there is gas from Ichuabo and the promise to bring the emergency power barges we were told were supposed to come in at the end of April, which we were told that there have been some delays because the Turkish company responsible for doing this said that it needs time to manufacture to specifications. So it does appear that all the measures that government is bringing on board to resolve the matter is not fully yielding results. So would you say these have been sufficient and that more should be done?
Where energy is concerned, as much as we can should be done. And you see, this is where people might think, when I say these things, I'm being controversial. This is where we need to look at our oil revenues critically, especially come 2016, 2017, when we're getting more production from the other fields. We need to look at how we are spending our oil revenue, so that if for nothing at all, a certain portion of that revenue should be put aside for energy. Now, in putting those funds aside, we need to put in place an energy development plan for Ghana, which consists of a mix. Look, I was reading on Bloomberg the other day, and I was shocked by what I read.
Yeah.
By the year 2030, solar would have taken over all forms of generation. All forms of generation. Solar. What do we have so cheaply in Africa? Sun. So why aren't we looking at it now? This is the time we need to look at it. Because we have the land and we have the sun. So we need to put a plan in place for the future. Look, come the year 2030, 2040, Ghana's population would have risen by 50 to 55 million. Who is planning towards that? Does that not have an impact on energy? Does not have an impact on power? Does that not have an impact on housing? All these things I've just talked about, is it not electricity that will power them? So the planning aspect is so important. And we need to start now. We don't need, you see, one thing we do very well is that when we're in a crisis and we solve those crises, we sit back and we go to bed. And when the crisis hits us again, then we sit back and we go to bed. What is my proof for saying that? Dumsor happened in J.J. Rawlings' time.
It happened in Kufuor's time as well.
Kufuor's time. Dumsor happened in Mill's time. Dumsor is now happening in
So
Mohammed's
if we
time.
don't plan, then it means that it will continue happening. And perhaps 50 years down the line, our children and grandchildren will still not have energy.
Exactly. And the planning isn't only planning for the physical. The planning has to do with financial also. And the only way you can plan financially is to make sure that you have a plan in place.
Mr. Jantua, Kojopoku has just joined us. We'll bring him into the discussion. We're having a very interesting discourse. So, Mr. Kojopoku, thanks for joining us. Is solar energy the alternative, or you feel that we should be exploring other forms also?
I should say hello, good evening to Mr. Jantua and yourself and all your listeners.
That's right.
Solar, you see, the solar technology has not evolved to the point where we can be looking at it to solve the current problem that we have.
Really?
So
I mean,
that's
interesting.
What we call there's what we call embedded generation, and that is something that I think there's a lot of focus on now. You see, the 2 megawatts of solar that was done in the north,
in Navrongo,
and it was added to the grid. To me, and a lot of experts agree that 2 megawatts would have been best served if it was just put on a 37 kV line and just given to ECG directly and supplied the communities in that area.
That's right.
Because the amount of losses that we have on our grid system, if you start putting solar on the grid, the amount of the percentage loss, if you put solar of 2 megawatts on the grid, you'll probably end up with less than 1 megawatt getting to the consumer.
So Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Kojopoku, let me get a clear understanding of what you're suggesting. Therefore, means that if, for example, we are resorting to solar energy, then we should have independent units of solar supplies in smaller quantities. For example, that in Accra we would have. Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is that, like, let's say in the north, okay, you have 2 megawatts of solar being generated in the north.
In Navrongo.
That 2 megawatts in Navrongo should be piped to the Navrongo community. Okay, you see, there are two steps. If you generate to 161 kV, that is what is the main grid, which is a higher transformer. And then 37 kV lines is what is stepped down for ECG to use. Now, if you put the 2 megawatts on the 37 kV line, ECG can take that straight away and then supply the community. You don't have to go to the high tension. So solar is a good idea, but only for embedded generation.
I see.
Localized use. If it is put in Navrongo, use it for the Navrongo people. Don't try to add it to the national grid. That is how solar will be effectively used. If you want to look at the bigger picture, what I have been discussing with some people recently is that, look, in 50 to 55 years ago, when Nkrumah came up with the Akosombo, it was a very mega idea, and it has served us for so many years till today. Now, in the next 50 years, who is going to be the next leader? Who is going to put that plan in place to give us something that is going to last?
Well, but Mr. Poku, there is no plan.
Right, but that is why some of these platforms are there for, and I have been advocating for a nuclear solution. And
are we ready for nuclear? I mean, if you say that solar technology is not developed well, do we have the expertise for nuclear?
No, but we don't, as a country or as individuals, we don't need to have expertise. I'll give you an example. In the U.S. right now, the U.S. federal government is giving a lot of subsidies to companies that are coming into the U.S. to develop nuclear energy. You see, what it is that all these technologies are not handled by individuals. They are companies that are there. But what I'm saying is, look, if I am saying nuclear, somebody will say coal, somebody will say solar, as you are saying.
Yeah.
What the government is supposed to do is to commission, a fact-finding study to look at all these areas and do a feasibility. What would give us something like a 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts? Because look, all these 300, 250, 150 that we are doing, it's all based on thermal, gas, and we're just going to have too many generations. We're going to have like 10 of 250 power plants to give us 2,500.
Right, Mr. Poku, I'm running out of time. Quickly, I have to switch to Mr. Jantua, and then I'll have you stay for briefly 30 seconds. So, Mr. Jantua, briefly 30 seconds. What is the way forward? What would you, in your estimation, suggest to resolve this Dumsor crisis once and for all?
You know, for me, I hear what Kojo is saying. But you take, for instance, you take hospital. They use hot water, don't they?
They
do. You take hotel. They use hot water, don't they? You take ministry. They use hot water, don't they? So this localized type of generation with solar is a plan that we should put in place. And I do agree with you that, or I do agree with Kojo that we need to look at a holistic plan of all the generation mixing and see which one works for us. For me, I think localized solar for different communities is fantastic, because what you do, you take them off the grid, you have excess electricity to also export. That export of electricity you're doing brings money in, which you now reinvest into the sector.
Mr. Jantua,
it's a question of planning.
Mr. Jantua, we're grateful for your time. We've had a very interesting discussion. And Kojopoku, your last 20 seconds. I know I should let you go, but it's fair to give you your last word.
It's okay. I just think that the government should institute a committee to do a fact-finding for the long term. For the short term, they are doing quite a lot. But I think for the long term, we should have a fact-finding committee that can explore all the major avenues that we can to even the next 10, 15 years down the line.
Right, Mr. Poku, thank you. Mr. Jantua says that we need a plan, and Mr. Poku also says that we need a fact-finding team to bring out all the challenges and problems facing our industries. My name is Stephen N.T., and thanks for joining us on today's Big Story. We'll be right back with the interactive segment. Do stay.